Hello everybody. If you want to read all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 665, The Clumsy Carpenter. Intermediate. Once upon a time, in a small village in England, there lived a carpenter named Fred. Fred loved his job. He made tables, chairs, and even birdhouses. But there was one big problem. Fred was very clumsy. He often dropped his tools or measured things wrong. His friends called him Fumbling Fred, but he always laughed about it. One sunny morning, Fred got a new job. Mrs. Jenkins, the old lady next door, wanted a new garden shed. "Make it strong and beautiful," she said. Fred was excited. He gathered his hammer, nails, saw, and wood. He started working in her garden. First, Fred measured the wood, but he raised the tape measure upside down. The pieces were too short. He tried to fix it by adding extra wood, but then the shed looked like a crooked tower. "Oh no," Fred groaned. He swung his hammer to nail a board, but he missed and hit his thumb. "Ouch!" he shouted, jumping around like a frog. Just then, Mrs. Jenkins came out with tea. She saw Fred dancing in pain. "Are you all right?" she asked. Fred nodded, his face red, but as he jumped, he knocked over a bucket of paint. The paint splashed all over the shed. Instead of plain wood, it now had colourful spots. Mrs. Jenkins laughed. "It looks like modern art. I love it." Fred continued building. He climbed a ladder to fix the roof, but the ladder slipped and Fred fell into a bush. Thorns pricked him everywhere. "Why me?" he cried. As he pulled himself out, he found an old coin in the bush. It was shiny and gold. "What's this?" he wondered. Later, he learned it was a rare antique, worth a lot of money. The next day, Fred tried to finish the door. He sawed the wood too fast, and the saw slipped. The door fell and broke a flower pot. Soil flew everywhere, covering Fred from head to toe. He looked like a muddy monster. Mrs. Jenkins's cat saw him and ran away in fright, knocking over a bird feeder. Seeds spilled out and birds came from all over to eat. But the birds ate the seeds and sang happily. Mrs. Jenkins smiled. "My garden has never been so lively," she said. Fred felt better. Maybe his clumsiness wasn't so bad. Finally, the shed was done. It was wobbly, spotted, and a bit short, but Mrs. Jenkins loved it. "It's unique," she said. "No one else has a shed like this." She paid Fred extra money and told all her friends about him. Word spread in the village. People wanted Fred to build things because his mistakes made everything fun and different. Soon, Fred had more jobs than ever. He even won a prize for the most creative carpenter at the village fair. Fred learned that sometimes being clumsy can lead to good luck. He still dropped tools, but now he smiled about it, and the village was happier with his funny creations. Vocabulary notes. Clumsy. Definition. Clumsy means awkward in movement or handling things, often causing accidents or mistakes because of poor coordination. Example. But there was one big problem. Fred was very clumsy. He often dropped his tools or measured things wrong. Similar words. Awkward, not smooth or graceful. Fumbling, handling something in a clumsy way, like dropping or mishandling. Inept, lacking skill or ability, especially in physical tasks. Groaned. Definition. Groaned means to make a deep, low sound expressing pain, annoyance, or discomfort, often like a sigh but louder. Example, "Oh no," Fred groaned. He swung his hammer to nail a board but missed and hit his thumb. Similar words, moaned, a similar sound but often softer and more complaining. Grumbled, to complain in a low voice, like muttering dissatisfaction. Sighed, a quieter sound of relief or frustration. Splashed. Definition. Splashed means to cause liquid to scatter or fly out in drops, often suddenly or accidentally, like when something hits water or paint. Example, but as he jumped, he knocked over a bucket of paint. The paint splashed all over the shed. Similar words. Spilled, to cause liquid to flow out accidentally, often from a container. Sprayed, to scatter liquid in fine drops, like from a hose. Scattered, to throw or spread things in different directions, not just liquid. Crooked. Definition. Crooked means not straight or aligned properly, bent, twisted, or uneven in shape. Example, he tried to fix it by adding extra wood, but then the shed looked like a crooked tower. Similar words. Bent, curved or angled instead of straight. Twisted, turned or wound in a way that's not straight. Uneven, not level or smooth with irregular surfaces. Wobbly. Definition. Wobbly means unsteady or shaky, tending to move from side to side or not firm in position. Example, finally the shed was done. It was wobbly, spotted, and a bit short, but Mrs. Jenkins loved it. Similar words. Shaky, trembling or not stable, often from weakness. Unstable, likely to change or fall, not secure. Rickety, old and likely to break or collapse, like weak furniture. Story written by Grok AI. Image created by Grok AI. To read all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're looking at a short story that kind of flips things on its head. It's about how a character's biggest weakness actually becomes their greatest strength.
Yeah, it's a fascinating premise.
So our mission is to unpack this story, The Clumsy Carpenter, and really get into the nuts and bolts of how the narrative works, the structure, and the language used to make these mistakes feel, well, valuable.
Absolutely. And it starts right away with the character, Fred. He's a carpenter in this little English village, loves his job, but everyone knows him as Fumbling Fred.
Fumbling Fred, okay.
The text is specific, calls him very clumsy or even, inept, which is quite a word for a carpenter, right? Mm-hmm. Precision is key in that job.
Exactly. It sets up this immediate contrast.
And you get the sense of his frustration, too. The story mentions him groaning when things go wrong, which seems to be often. It really sets the stage for, well, not quite disaster, but definitely not perfection.
Right. And then Mrs. Jenkins hires him for this big job, a garden shed. She wants something solid, beautiful, but things don't exactly go to plan, do they?
Not at all. It's almost like a cascade of clumsiness. The first big one is just reading the tape measure wrong.
Upside down, wasn't it?
Upside down, yeah. So the pieces are too short. He has to kind of patch it together. And right away, the shed looks like a crooked tower.
A crooked tower. So it's visually wrong from the get-go.
Instantly. But the writer doesn't just leave it there. The mistakes build on each other. Like he hits his thumb.
Ouch, we've all been there.
Right. And because he jumps from the pain, he knocks over a bucket of paint. The word used is splashed, which gives you this really energetic, messy visual.
Total opposite of careful painting.
Exactly. So now the shed isn't just crooked, it's spotted. But here's the twist. Mrs. Jenkins sees it and thinks it's modern art.
Modern art. Okay, so the mistakes are being reframed already.
Precisely. The author's playing with our definition of success. And it keeps happening. He falls off a ladder.
Oh, dear.
But as he falls into a bush, he finds a rare, antique gold coin. Pure luck, it seems.
It seems like it, yeah.
Then there's the flower pot incident. Breaks it, gets covered in soil, looks like a muddy monster.
A muddy monster.
And that scares the neighbor's cat.
Okay, now I have to ask here. Structurally, is this getting a bit much? The gold coin, now the cat. Is this sequence just piling on coincidences, or does it serve the story? Like the cat knocks over a bird feeder, birds come, Mrs. Jenkins loves their singing. Is it essential?
That's a fair question. It definitely leans into serendipity, the happy accident. But I think the writer uses this escalation deliberately. The core failure is the shed itself, crooked, spotted. The other things, the coin, the bird song, they're like supporting details.
Okay.
They reinforce the theme. It's Fred's clumsiness, his constant sort of frantic activity that leads him into these unique situations. He's succeeding because he's failing by normal standards. The cat sequence underlines how his messiness creates unexpected positive ripple effects.
So the chaos itself generates the value, right? So if we think about the language used to describe the finished shed, it's things like wobbly, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wobbly, unsteady, shaky. It's all about imperfection. But for Mrs. Jenkins, these imperfections make it unique.
Unique. That's the key word she uses.
That's the synthesis, yeah. The story links Fred's, his inept physical actions directly to the final aesthetic. Words like clumsy and splashed describe how he works, but unique and wobbly describe the result.
It feels like the story's arguing that real creativity came from him having to constantly fix his own mistakes.
I think so. The constraints, even though they were accidental and self-inflicted, forced a different kind of outcome, maybe a kind of unintentional innovation.
And it pays off for him, right? He wins the most creative carpenter prize in the village.
Gets more jobs than ever. People love the shed because, as the story says, his mistakes made it fun and different. He even got paid extra.
So the big takeaway seems to be sometimes being awkward, making mistakes can actually lead to, well, good luck and originality. It's not the straight path that gets you somewhat interesting.
It definitely suggests that. Which leads to a final thought, perhaps, for you listening. If uniqueness really does sometimes spring from imperfection, if maybe creativity is just how we respond when things go wrong,
Yeah.
what small mistake, what little deviation from the perfect plan might you be willing to risk today?
Something to think about. Something to maybe even build on.